Just a couple of small little jobs to do now. These are the old interior light switches, work really well, but they're sort of gone manky and there's bronze overspray, so I'll just stick a couple of new ones in. And it's just a matter of plugging them in and Bob's your uncle. Not a really strong connection there, but hopefully it's alright. Beauty. Thought this 351 Cleveland would be a good backdrop. I've got another one of these. I stuffed up the first one and they're inclined to slip out, so I'm just going to groove it. They might grab a bit better just against the body of the light. Now there are two manufacturers of these light shades. There's these nice clear white ones, a mob that makes these, and there's also these sort of yellowy ones. I've got one on the other side there. Make sure you get the nice bright white ones because they fit a lot better. Some of these ones, this is the second set of these I've had, and they have like a residue of glue all over them. They're absolute crap, so I might even get another one for the other side because they're just not cutting it. This is actually the one I broke. Let's see if these door switches work. Champion. Got a couple of floor blanks here. Gonna chuck them in. I'll just put a bit of mastic seal around there. This stuff stays soft. So plop that on. It's just another small job that sort of blocks up some holes in the body in preparation for finishing touches. So why is there a C4 pounded valve body sitting on the bench here? That's because we have a problem with our transmission that I found out after I started filling it up. And there are the two parts we need now. There's two O-rings. There was an O-ring there in the middle for the kick down, and that's the selector shaft seal there. This is perhaps a better view. I've taken the neutral start off. That's a little O-ring for the kick down. You can see it sort of popped out because the shaft's loose now and it's leaking from behind here and dripping down off this rod here. Right, so these serrations here are the detent mechanism. I've got dirty gloves on, I should change these. That's the detent mechanism for, it's like a spring roller thing that's on the valve body. When we put the thing together, we're going to have to be very careful we get the position of this rod in that selector on the valve body and also this thing in the right spot. But I've loosened this bolt, this nut, sorry. I'm in the wrong position. I've got no access really, but I'm just going to undo this and take it out. I've dropped something. I'm just going to investigate that as well. This is a pain in the neck because I actually asked the bloke that looked at the transmission to put new seals in it, and he's a fantastic guy, but I think he just forgot. But on the bench this is an easy job, there's nothing difficult about it. On the floor it's a pain in the neck, and I've withdrawn that now, so the selector shaft should now come out, which I have in my hand, and I'll withdraw that kick down. There we go. And so I've got to figure out why this was leaking so badly. The kick down O-ring looked alright, but we need to have a look at this. And there's a reason why this is leaking, and it's leaking badly too, and I've got to suss that out. So it'll be in that area there, so I'll clean all that up. And here's our selector shaft seal, which does feel pretty hard, so I'm going to try and flick that out. And that is not going to come out easily, so I'm going to have to mess about with that. Here we go. My oh my. Transmission leaks are funny because after a while some of them just go away, but it's because seals get hard and they sort of get reinvigorated when they're used again. If autos are left for too long, they'll always leak, and this is what's happened for this thing. So we'll bang another seal in. So here are new seals. They're $19 online. So they're not terribly expensive, but as I said, it's the sort of cost involved with labour of putting them in. And we have a lovely new seal. We have to make sure we stick that in the right way. There's a shoulder down it which has to face inward, so oil runs up against it, if you know what I mean. It can't get through it. So that would be the outside, that would be the inside. So we need to put that in. These are the old ones. That's the old O-ring. It feels a bit rigid compared to this one. That one's a lot more compressible. Rubber gets like that over time, particularly where it's mixed with oil and heat. It just wears out basically. Now before we put this in, I can put this in, we have to use Snow White petroleum jelly around there. We can't use grease, remember, because it affects the transmission fluid and then does all sorts of nasty tricks to the clutch packs in the auto. And we have to clean all this up because I don't want this leaking again. The camera's actually in the way a bit. I might have to turn it off. I'll just plop that up there. And as with any seal, you've just got to put it in, and it's sitting crooked, hang on a second, you've just got to put it in nice and evenly. And I'm just moving the socket around so I can get it nice and flush. And we'll put it all the way home. You can hear the tone change. Beautiful. Okay, we're sorted. Now I've got to have a look at that other thing and stick it in, the actual selector shaft itself. And we should be in a little bit better shape. And we're just using a bit of fine Scotch-Brite. I'm getting right in to the corners and going, because the seal runs this way, I'm going around this way. It wouldn't, I mean, it'd be hard to do it anyway this way, but you wouldn't go that way. You never ever go that way. You always go the direction of the seal. And while this is off, I should give it a bit of a paint job so I can get to it better now. We want a nice smooth seal place, and there's a bit of pitting in there, which is a bit of a concern. And as I put this in now, it's important that the large hole goes toward the bottom because that's where our selector rod goes. That won't go all the way because this thing's in the way. I'll have to go around the other side and finish that off. Alright, well that's all in, and we've got this now, so if we pull this forward, there's a linkage. I don't know if you can see there, it's pushing on that rod, that's the parking pull, so that's all good. And we just have to make sure when we plop the valve body back in, these are located. This thing just sort of hits on a plunger on the valve body. This one here has to fit inside a groove in a plunger for the selector. So I'm not going to film putting the valve body in because I need as much room under here as I can. I don't think I can put the camera where I need to put it for a good view. So I think I've got that one sussed quite well. I'm just going to do these up finger tight for now and then I'll torque them up. It's important we torque these things down. All the valve body bolts are the same length. There's about 8 of them, except there's one long one that goes through the filter screen. And it's important that we get these in the right order because if you put a long one somewhere where it's not meant to go, it'll punch through the casing and then you bugger up your transmission. So I'll just finger tight these up, sort of nip them up a little bit, and then we'll torque them down. Now another thing worth doing before we put the pan back on is just to check with a straight edge across it, because we want to avoid any high sort of areas where the bolts have been over tightened, and this has been over tightened a little bit. It's not too bad. I think it was worse on the other side, and we can just repair that. This is just a bit of rectangle black steel. I'll use it as a dolly, and you can just sort of put it behind there and tap it back. We're just putting a new gasket on. The one that came off is only pretty new anyway because it had a service. I'll just take that out. Ooh, be careful when I take it out. I'll check it against the old one. I've got the old one on the floor. Perfect. We're going to put that in. Just putting this pan back on. There's this steel spacer here. Now that's important to keep on because we've got to put somehow, and I don't know how, that on. So yeah, that's how it goes. So that's for the column linkage. I haven't put these in yet. I'm assuming it goes this way. I've not done one of these before, so I'll just try it anyway. And if I get it wrong, you can post things like I told you so. Don't. This linkage setup cost me $100 a while ago. I sort of cleaned up and painted it. But for now, I'll just go around and nip these up. And again, do them diagonally. Always start in the middle and work your way out. I saw it on an American show. They started at the outside and worked in, and I was sort of thinking to myself, that's actually incorrect. Now I want you all to know that I'm an idiot, and the reason for that is because I've modified this bush to go into this bracket, for the other side, then realise that this goes in those two holes for the 6-cylinder. The V8 bracket I haven't got, so I'm going to have to try and find that. I've also got to put split pins on here and all this sort of stuff, but I've got the linkages sort of all sussed out, so now I've got to do it again. Now when I bought these linkages it came with this bracket. It was supposed to be for a 302. Now, being a bit silly, I actually had this one plated with the rest of the stuff, and that was the same as that thing. It turns out it was the wrong one, so when we're sort of mucking around with old cars we tend to source inspiration wherever we can find it. And I found this been kicking around on my bench for ages. It's actually a guide for a wardrobe door, a sliding wardrobe door, and it looked about right for what the V8 one would look like. I sort of marked the back of it. And so I used a bit of 3mm plate, which I also had lying around, and made another one. And there's the bracket over there. It resembles the V8 one, and I sort of churned out the centre of it, or bored out the centre of it to hold that bush, to house that bush. So that turned out quite well. And here's another view of it. I'll try and zoom in on it. This camera's pretty rubbish, but there it is there. See? Does not look nice. Works very well too. And what that means now is we've got all our quadrant and gear shift all sorted out. All I need to do now is just a couple of small adjustments to the neutral start switch and we're good to go. Is that going? The other thing that wasn't working properly is this flasher can. This is the old style flasher can. I don't have another one of those, although I will get one because they're quite cheap, and I sort of like the dink donk sort of noise they make. I've just got this electronic one. The electronic one uses 3 pins, and it's important to note that's not a positive, it's an earth. There is a separate earth on there. On a lot of them, not all of them, that's a hella one. And what that means now is when I turn it on, I've got indicators. Doesn't quite sound right for an old car, so I might put the mechanical one back in. The other thing I don't like is this rear ride height, and I've got the original springs in. Now they will settle a little bit when the fuel tank, the rear glass and the back seat and all that sort of stuff's in, the boot lid and that. But they're not going to settle that much. There's a good 5-6 inches there. There's a huge amount of room there, and this car always did sit a little bit too high at the back. So I've got these Mustang GT ones, and again they're from Brother John's Mustang. He's not using them. I think they're the same in terms of fit, and they're a lot flatter. These are actually genuine ones, C7Z, so it's a Mustang part, genuine Ford Mustang part. And so he's not using them. Again, he's gone for the $1 million option. He's changing everything. I might try them anyway, because I don't reckon I'm going to be able to use these other ones. Now, taking the rear springs out of one of these is dead easy if you've just had them out before, or if you've just fitted them. All you need to do is support the rear axle on a stand, and the car on stands. You can just take it out, dead easy. The thing is, well, the thing that I've noticed is look at the difference between the Mustang and the standard Falcon one. I've just put a bolt in there to make sure it's all level here. Everything's sort of in the same place and so forth, but the height difference is ridiculous. So I'm going to use the Mustang ones. I think I'm going to go with those. These are out of my brother's Mustang. These are the standard 6-cylinder ones. These actually look like they must have been wrong, but it always sat up at the back, but I just couldn't I couldn't stand the right height. So this is another thing, another bit of original stuff that's not going in the car. And there's not much of this car that's original now, very, very little. Well, the windscreen bloke was supposed to come last Friday, but it turns out the screen he got was one of the original clear glass ones, and he wanted the ceramic edged one for the urethane that he's going to use on the sealer. Or for the sealer. I'm still having dramas with this bonnet. This is a great bonnet, but I've found stretch fractures. There's one either side of that spot weld. I'll get a bit of view, and I've drilled the ends of the cracks, so I'm just going to weld them up. I put a bit of filler in here, but the only problem is if it flexes, that's likely to crack, so I might dig that out. There's another stress fracture under here. Oh, that's in focus. Under here, and I sort of drilled it and filled it. That's sort of covered by the hinge, so you won't see an awful lot, even though it doesn't look the tidiest. I'm not a great welder. I've always sort of relied on other people, but I've done this one myself. So That should be alright. That should be a lot stronger than it was. Well, doesn't it look lovely? It's got the glass in, new windscreen, and also the rear screen in. I've put these moulds in, or these trims at the side. They don't fit very well. Again, it's repro stuff giving me grief. I've just got to stick this decal on the inside of the window now. I always use Windex and newspaper for cleaning windows. Seems to do really, really well. Get my grotty fingerprints off my little witness marks. There's a reason why I've chosen this one. I'll go into it in the last episode. You can see I've painted the parcel tray. You can paint masonite, but you just got to put your first coat of primer, just sort of dust it on. Otherwise, if you put it on too heavy, it'll just drink up, if you know what I mean. So I did a couple of coats of primer. The first one was very, very light, and then I gave it a couple of coats of the satin top coat. I've also, and I keep going on, people must think I drink this Flexade stuff, but I did put a bit in just because we're going to warp it to fit it down between the two C-pillar parts where the headlining is, and also it gives it a tiny bit more sheen. And what that's good for is wiping it down later, so I'm fairly happy with that. Still working on panels, I suppose. This is the bonnet, obviously. I've done the underside, haven't done the top yet. That can be done later on, and then we'll put the bonnet on. I'm not going to go into any of that because I've already covered all that sort of stuff. And what's even more surprising is I haven't even started the boot lid yet, so I've got to strip that down too. Now, I've gone against what I originally said. I was going to put a V8 badge there, but with little Borg Warner rear end, it would look like a 302, so I decided to go with those. These first turned up on ZC Fairlanes, and I think they were on the Cleveland, the first of the two K-Code ones. I'm not really sure, but I am fairly sure I saw one at Shannon's being auctioned that was a Windsor car that was original, of course. They used to have them on the front of the guard up there. Most of these are seen on XY K-Codes and ZD Fairlanes, and they had them sort of down there in a similar spot. But I've gone with this because I like it. The other thing I might have to do later in the day is put a 9-inch rear axle in, just to give it that legitimate look. This is courtesy of Jason again. He's given me 3 metres of this stuff. I haven't got chalk. This is just a carbon overlay. I'm just going to roughly cut it out for the bottom of the parcel tray. It's quite heavy stuff. It doesn't look heavy, but it is, and I'll use it underneath the carpet as well. I've dropped it on the floor and got crap stuck to it all. He's a kind bloke. He gave me this, and he was the guy that did the headlining, and he sort of suffers the same problem I do, where people tend to take advantage of his generosity, and he's got a whole lot of, well, he's got a few XWs, and he's got an XB, and he's let people raid 1 or 2 bits off them, but came to regret it later when he never saw them again. There we go. Put that in. But we'll see when I fit the back seat. I'm going to do that reasonably soon, and yeah, we'll suck it and see. A lot of the parts on this car, repro parts, aren't tremendously well fitting. Well, I don't reckon there's many old cars that look nearly as good as this. It's a bit of a handsome devil now, isn't it? The Americans apparently hate 4-door sedans, and don't reckon they're worth a cracker, but I'll tell you what, as an Australian, I don't reckon they get any better than this. But this is where car restoration begins to become very, very good fun. This is a good car in that it's had a lot of work on it, and it's caused a lot of, well, it hasn't caused any stress, but it's caused a lot of work that was unforeseen. But I've never been stressed with it. I knew exactly what I wanted, and I must say, I'm getting precisely what I bargained for. So I'm going to call it quits there. In the next chapter, we'll buff up that scuttle and put it on. The bonnet will be put on. The fuel pump will be in. That's the old fuel pump that doesn't work. I was using an electric one on the stand. I want to get the proper fuel pump in. I've got that on the bench over there. We'll start the trimming and put the rear seats in. Not sure about carpet, a bit short on the funds at the moment. And of course we'll put the rear shockers in, we'll fill up the rear axle, put the petrol tank in, and we're not too far off then. It's turning out precisely how I wanted. So, hope you've enjoyed it. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you later. Ta-da!